You wake up every morning, and something feels wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not the kind of wrong you can point to and say, this is it, this is the problem. It's quieter than that. It's the kind of wrong that lives in your chest, in the space between your breath and your heartbeat. You go through your day. You do the things you're supposed to do. You smile when you're supposed to smile. You respond when you're supposed to respond. But underneath it all, there's this persistent gnawing feeling that you're not really here, that you're watching your life happen instead of living it, and you don't understand why. You've tried everything. You've read the books. You've set the goals. You've changed the habits. You've worked on yourself. You've even convinced yourself at times that you're making progress. But then, in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, that feeling comes back. That emptiness, that disconnection, that sense that something fundamental is missing and you have no idea what it is or how to find it. Let me tell you what's actually happening. The reason you're struggling to feel alive today isn't because you're broken. It isn't because you're not trying hard enough. It isn't because there's something inherently wrong with you. The reason you're struggling to feel alive is because the childhood you were supposed to have, the one that would have taught you how to be alive, never happened. And that absence, that void where your childhood should have been, is still running your life. This isn't about nostalgia. This isn't about looking back at old photos and wishing things were simpler. This is about understanding that childhood isn't just a phase you go through and leave behind. Childhood is the foundation upon which your entire sense of self is built. It's where you learn what safety feels like. It's where you learn what love feels like. It's where you learn that you matter, that your needs are valid, that your presence in this world is wanted. And if you didn't get that, if your childhood was taken from you before you could fully experience it, you're left trying to build a life on a foundation that was never there. Think about what childhood is supposed to be. Not the idealized version you see in movies, not the sanitized nostalgia people sell you. Real childhood, the kind where you're allowed to be small, where you're allowed to make mistakes, where you're allowed to be curious and messy and loud and soft and scared and brave, sometimes all at once, where the adults around you see your needs and meet them without resentment, where you're protected from things that are too big for you to handle, where you're given the space to discover who you are without being told who you should be. For so many of you, that didn't happen. Maybe your parents were physically there, but emotionally absent. Maybe they were dealing with their own pain, their own unhealed wounds, and they simply didn't have the capacity to see yours. Maybe they loved you, but they loved you in the only way they knew how, and that way didn't reach the parts of you that needed it most. Maybe you were expected to be the adult when you were still a child. Maybe your emotions were too much for them, so you learned to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to manage. Maybe you were praised for being independent, for not needing anything, and you learned that needing something was the same as being weak. Or maybe it was more obvious. Maybe there was violence. Maybe there was neglect. Maybe there were words that cut deeper than any physical wound. Maybe you learned very early that the world wasn't safe, that people couldn't be trusted, that you had to protect yourself because no one else would. Whatever your story is, the result is the same. You grew up too fast. Not in the way people mean when they say someone is mature for their age. You grew up in the way that matters, in the way that breaks something inside you. You grew up before you were ready, before you had the chance to just be. And now as an adult, you're walking around with a child inside you who never got what they needed. A child who is still waiting, still hoping, still carrying all that pain and confusion and loneliness. Here's what most people don't understand about childhood trauma. They think trauma has to be dramatic. They think it has to be something you can tell a story about, something with a clear beginning and a clear villain. But the most damaging kind of trauma isn't always the big, obvious events. It's the chronic absence of what should have been there. It's the love you didn't receive, the validation you didn't get, the safety you never felt, the freedom to just be a child that was never given to you. And that absence shapes everything. It shapes how you see yourself. It shapes how you relate to others. It shapes what you believe you deserve. It shapes your capacity to feel joy, to feel peace, to feel anything deeply without immediately needing to protect yourself from it. You wonder why you struggle with intimacy, Why you push people away even when you desperately want them close. Why you choose partners who can't give you what you need, and why you sabotage the ones who can. It's because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. And trust requires the belief that it's safe to need someone. And if you learned early on that needing someone was dangerous, that showing your real self led to rejection or disappointment or pain, then intimacy becomes terrifying. So you protect yourself. You keep people at arm's length. You create walls and call them boundaries. You convince yourself you're better off alone even as the loneliness eats you alive. You wonder why you can't rest, why even your downtime feels heavy, why you can't just enjoy the moment without your mind racing ahead to the next thing you need to do, the next problem you need to solve, the next crisis you need to prevent. It's because rest requires safety, and you never learned what safety feels like. You learned that letting your guard down was dangerous, that relaxing meant something bad could happen. So your nervous system stays activated, always scanning for threats, always preparing for the next blow. And you call this anxiety, and you try to manage it with breathing exercises and meditation apps, but you're trying to fix a symptom while ignoring the root. You wonder why nothing feels enough, why you achieve things and feel empty, why you chase goals and milestones and accomplishments, thinking that if you just get to the next level, if you just prove yourself one more time, then you'll finally feel worthy. But worthiness isn't something you can earn through achievement. It's something you should have been given freely, just for existing. And if you didn't get that, if your value was conditional, if love and approval were things you had to work for, then you're stuck in a loop, chasing external validation to fill an internal void that can't be filled from the outside. You wonder why you feel so much guilt, why you can't say no without feeling like you're hurting someone, why you take on responsibilities that aren't yours, why you sacrifice your needs for others, even when they wouldn't do the same for you. It's because you learned that your needs were a burden, that taking up space was selfish, that your job was to make things easier for everyone else, even if it destroyed you. So you became the helper, the caretaker, the one who's always fine, always okay, always managing. And now you're exhausted and you don't even know how to ask for help because asking feels like admitting failure. This is what a lost childhood does. It doesn't just take away your past, it infects your present. It makes you live your entire adult life from a place of deficit, always trying to compensate for something you can't even name, always trying to fix yourself, improve yourself, optimize yourself, as if you're a problem that needs solving instead of a person who needed something they didn't get. And the cruelest part? You blame yourself. You look at other people who seem to have it together, who seem to know how to be happy, how to be present, how to just live. And you wonder what's wrong with you. Why can't you just move on? Why can't you just be normal? Why does everything feel so hard for you when it seems so easy for everyone else? But here's the truth they're not telling you. Those people who seem to have it all figured out, many of them are performing too. Many of them are hiding the same wounds. And the ones who genuinely do seem okay, they're not better than you. They're not stronger than you. They just had something you didn't have. They had a childhood that gave them what they needed. They had adults who protected them. They had space to develop a sense of self that wasn't built on survival. They got to be children. And you didn't. Listen to me very carefully. This is not your fault. The fact that you're struggling is not evidence of your weakness. It's evidence of your strength. You survived something that should have destroyed you. You made it through a childhood that didn't give you what you needed, and you're still here, still trying, still hoping that things can be different. That alone is extraordinary. But survival isn't the same as living, and this is where the real work begins. Because you can't change what happened to you. You can't go back and give yourself the childhood you deserved, but you can stop letting that lost childhood run your present. You can start to acknowledge the child inside you who is still waiting, still hurting, still hoping to be seen, and you can start to give that child what they never got. This doesn't mean indulging in self-pity. It doesn't mean making excuses for your behavior or refusing to take responsibility for your life. It means having the courage to look at your wounds instead of hiding from them. It means understanding that the patterns you hate about yourself, the ways you sabotage and struggle and suffer, they're not character flaws, they're adaptations. They're survival strategies that you developed when you were small and scared and alone. And they worked. They kept you alive. But they're not serving you anymore. You need to learn how to reparent yourself, to give yourself the things you didn't get, to speak to yourself with the kindness you deserved as a child, to validate your own emotions instead of dismissing them, to set boundaries without guilt, to rest without shame, to need things without believing that needing makes you weak. You need to understand that feeling alive isn't about achieving more or becoming more. It's about releasing the grip of the past. It's about allowing yourself to be present in your life instead of constantly bracing for the next wound. It's about learning, slowly and painfully and beautifully, that you are allowed to take up space, that your needs matter, that you don't have to earn your right to exist. This is hard work. It's the hardest work you'll ever do, because it means facing the parts of yourself you've been running from your entire life. It means feeling the grief of what you lost, the anger at what was taken from you, the sadness for the child you were who deserved so much better. And feeling those things is terrifying when you've spent your whole life trying not to feel them. But on the other side of that grief is freedom. On the other side of acknowledging what you didn't have is the possibility of finally giving it to yourself. On the other side of understanding why you struggle is the ability to have compassion for yourself instead of judgment. You're not struggling to feel alive because you're doing something wrong. You're struggling to feel alive because you're trying to live with a wound that was never healed. And you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. You can't change what you keep hiding from yourself. So start here. Start with the truth. The truth that your childhood matters. That what happened to you, or what didn't happen to you, shaped who you are in ways you're still discovering. The truth that you're allowed to grieve for the child you were. That you're allowed to be angry about what was taken from you. That you're allowed to need things, to want things, to feel things deeply without immediately needing to fix them or explain them or make them smaller. The truth that you're not broken, you're wounded. And there's a difference. Broken means beyond repair. Wounded means you're still here, still capable of healing, still capable of learning what it means to feel alive. Your lost childhood is not a life sentence. It's an explanation. It's context. It's the beginning of understanding, not the end of your story. And understanding is where change becomes possible. The child inside you who never got what they needed, they're still there, still waiting, still hoping that one day someone will see them, and that someone can be you. You can be the adult who finally shows up, who finally says, I see you, I hear you, I'm sorry for what happened to you, and I'm here now. That's where healing begins. Not in denying the past, but in acknowledging it. Not in pushing forward at all costs, but in turning back to look at what you've been running from. Not in trying to be strong all the time, but in allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to feel what you've been avoiding. You deserve to feel alive. Not in some distant future when you've finally fixed everything. Not when you've achieved enough or improved enough or become enough. Now, as you are. With all your wounds and scars and broken pieces. You deserve to be here fully, to experience your life instead of just surviving it. And it starts with this. With recognizing that the reason you're struggling isn't because you're failing. It's because you're carrying something heavy, something you've been carrying for so long you forgot it was there. It's because the childhood you never had is still asking to be grieved, to be acknowledged, to be honored for what it cost you. So honor it. Grieve it. Feel the weight of what you lost and then slowly start to build something new. Not on top of the old foundation, but with a new understanding of why that foundation was never stable to begin with. This is your life. Not the one you should have had. Not the one you wish you had. The one you have. And within this life, within this present moment, is the possibility of something different. The possibility of finally learning what it means to feel alive. Not despite your past, but with full awareness of it. Not by denying what happened, but by refusing to let it define what comes next. The childhood you never had took so much from you. But it doesn't have to take your future. That's still yours to claim. That's still yours to build. That's still yours to live. And it starts now. With this moment. With this breath. With this truth. You are allowed to feel alive. You are always allowed. You just never learned how. But you can learn now. And every day you choose to try. Every day you choose to acknowledge your wounds instead of hiding from them. Every day you choose to give yourself what you didn't get. You're taking back what was stolen. Your lost childhood is the reason you're struggling, but it doesn't have to be the reason you stay stuck. Healing is possible. Change is possible. Feeling alive is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. And possible is enough to start. If this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these words, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button, because this channel is dedicated to the truth that nobody else wants to say. The truth about why you struggle. The truth about what healing actually looks like. The truth about how to build a life worth living even when your foundation was broken from the start. And leave a comment. Tell me what this brought up for you. What part of your childhood are you still carrying? What wounds are you ready to finally acknowledge? Your story matters. Your experience matters. And sharing it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in their own struggle. Your healing starts here, but it doesn't end here. This is just the beginning of finally understanding why your life has felt the way it has. And understanding is the doorway to everything that comes next.